In 2026, the average Australian household spends $29,000 a year on housing. That is the mortgage, the rent, the rates, the bills. It is the single largest cost in most people's lives. There are towns in this country where you can live for free. This is where they are. Number 5. Nungarin, Western Australia. The wheatbelt town giving away land, not selling, because without new residents, there is no town left. Nungarin sits in the heart of the Western Australian wheatbelt, approximately 300 kilometers east of Perth, at the edge of a landscape so flat and open that the sky feels like a physical presence rather than a backdrop. The population is around 70 people. The Shire of Nungarin manages 3,404 square kilometers, with a rate base so small it barely generates the revenue needed to keep the lights on in the council office. The nearest city is Merredin, 45 kilometers to the east. Beyond that, it is Perth, and Perth is 3 hours away. The Shire is dying in the way that small agricultural towns die, slowly, then faster. Young people leave for the cities. Farms consolidate. The primary school shrinks. The sporting club struggles for numbers. The council looks at its revenue projections and makes a calculation. An empty town generates nothing. A populated town, even a small one, generates rates, economic activity, and a reason for services to continue. So the Shire of Nungarin began offering residential land blocks at no cost. Not reduced, not discounted, free. The conditions are straightforward. You accept the block, you build a home on it within an agreed time frame, and you commit to residing there for a minimum of 3 years. If you do not build or do not stay, the land reverts. The Shire is not running a charity. It is running a calculation. A house with a family in it is worth more to a town of 70 than a vacant block generating nothing. The surrounding landscape has the quality of something that has not been hurried. Salmon gums line the roads, the tall gray-barked eucalypts that grow in the wheatbelt's red soil and turn silver in the afternoon light. Wildflower season transforms the roadsides into something that looks like it has been arranged deliberately, though nothing here has been arranged at all. The wheatbelt sky at night is the kind of dark that city people drive hours to experience and still cannot quite find. Here, it is simply Tuesday. Council rates on a residential block in Nungarin are among the lowest in Western Australia, by the arithmetic of a tiny shire managing a large area with minimal infrastructure. There is a primary school, a community hall, a sporting facility, and the particular social texture of a town where everyone is genuinely aware of everyone else's circumstances, not as surveillance, but as a function of scale. For someone willing to build and commit, Nungarin offers what no coastal suburb in this country can offer: land at no cost in a community that actively wants you there, in a landscape that takes some getting used to and then becomes very difficult to leave. The government of Western Australia is not advertising this. The Shire of Nungarin is advertising it quietly because the alternative is worse. Nungarin gives you the land and asks you to stay. The next town gives you something else entirely, a legal mechanism that lets you build a home for $150 a year underground in the opal capital of the world. Number 4. Coober Pedy, South Australia. $150 a year. No building permit, no heating bill, no cooling bill. The legal mechanism is buried in South Australian mining law, and nobody in the housing industry wants you to find it. Drive north from Adelaide for 8 hours, and the country stops pretending it has anything to offer. The trees thin out, then disappear. The red earth takes over. And then, at 850 kilometers, a town appears on the horizon that looks from a distance like a construction site that was abandoned mid-demolition. Pale mullock heaps scattered across the plain, crater-pocked ground, no visible vegetation, structures that seem to have grown from the earth rather than been built on top of it. This is Coober Pedy. Around 1,700 people live here. Many of them live below the surface of that cratered ground, in homes you would not know existed from the outside. The Pitjantjatjara Jara name Coober Pedy means boy's water hole. The town has been producing opal since 1915, when a teenager on a gold prospecting expedition found a stone that changed the direction of his life, and eventually the direction of an entire settlement. Today, approximately 70% of the world's gem-quality opal comes from the fields surrounding this town. That single fact explains the economy, the population, and the legal framework that makes what follows possible. South Australian mining law classifies dugout homes as mining operations. That classification is not an accident or an oversight. It is the product of a century of people living underground in a place where above-ground habitation in summer, with temperatures exceeding 45 degrees Celsius and occasionally above 50 degrees Celsius, borders on the genuinely dangerous. Because a dugout is a mining operation, it does not require a building permit in the conventional sense. You register a mining claim. Each claim is 50 by 50 meters. The annual fee is $150. On that claim, you have the legal right to dig and to reside while actively mining. The sequence is pay $150, excavate, move in. The sequence does not include planning application, building inspector, council approval, or development fee. What the earth provides in return for $150 is this: a constant internal temperature of 22 to 24 degrees every day of the year, in every season, at no cost. The sandstone around Coober Pedy is thermally stable in a way that no insulation product, no double glazing, and no HVAC system can replicate at any price point. The average Australian household spends over $2,000 a year managing indoor temperature. In a Coober Pedy dugout, that number is zero. Not reduced, not offset, zero. The rock does it for free because rock has been doing it for longer than the concept of an electricity bill has existed. The homes themselves would surprise anyone who has not been inside one. Carved archways between rooms, walls that curve where the excavation followed the softer sandstone. Kitchens, bathrooms, living areas, all underground, all fully functional, all connected to power and internet. Some are compact single-room dwellings. Others are sprawling multi-room residences that took years of gradual excavation to complete, growing room by room as the occupant dug further into the hill. There are underground churches, an underground art gallery, an underground hotel. The Serbian Orthodox Church has been carved into its hillside since the 1970s. It holds services. People get married in it. The town has a hospital, schools, supermarkets, and restaurants representing the cuisines of over 40 nationalities, the legacy of post-war migration that brought Greeks, Italians, Croatians, and dozens of other communities to the South Australian desert to dig for color stones, and discovered that the desert, unlikely as it seemed, was somewhere they could stay. That multicultural foundation is now 3 or 4 generations deep. The children of the original migrants grew up underground, went to school underground, and in many cases came back to raise their own children the same way. Right now, in the desert outside the town boundary, there are people living on registered mining claims with no formal address recorded anywhere, no rates notice arriving, no utility bills, and an annual housing cost of $150. They run solar panels for electricity. They pump water from artesian bores. They mine opal, which does not pay predictably, but occasionally pays spectacularly. A single decent find can return months of living costs in an afternoon. The district council has neither the budget nor, by most accounts, the appetite to pursue people living quietly in the opal fields. The arrangement suits everyone except the institutions that profit from the housing market, and those institutions are not here. Coober Pedy buries the cost of housing in the earth. The next town takes a different approach. The government pays you to show up. Number 3. Cobar, New South Wales. The mining town where the government offers cash to relocate, the outback handles the rest of your bills, and the copper has been running for 150 years. Cobar sits in central western New South Wales, approximately 700 kilometers west of Sydney on the Mitchell Highway, at the point where the semi-arid country of the Western Plains begins to make its intentions clear. The population is around 4,500 people. The Cobar Shire covers 47,087 square kilometers, an area larger than Switzerland, and it is managed with the budget of a small regional council, which means enforcement capacity is measured against geography, and geography tends to win. The town exists because of copper. The Great Cobar Copper Mine opened in 1871, and the copper has not stopped since. Cobar is home to some of the most significant base metal deposits in New South Wales, and the mines currently operating employ a substantial portion of the local workforce at wages that bear no resemblance to what those same workers would earn doing comparable labor in Sydney. The mines pay well because the mines are in Cobar, and Cobar requires a particular kind of person to choose it. The New South Wales Regional Skills Relocation Incentive is a government program that most Australians in the coastal cities have never heard of. For skilled workers who relocate to designated regional areas, and Cobar is among them, the program offers financial support of up to $10,000 to assist with the costs of moving. This is not a grant tied to a specific employer. It is tied to the act of relocating your skilled labor to a place that needs it. You move. You bring your trade, your qualification, your professional expertise. The government helps cover the cost of getting there. Once you are there, the cost of staying is a different conversation from the one happening in Sydney or Melbourne. A 3-bedroom house in Cobar costs between $180,000 and $280,000, purchased and owned, with no mortgage consuming 40% of monthly income. Council rates exist because Cobar has a council, but they are applied across an enormous shire with industrial ratepayers, mines, absorbing a disproportionate share of the burden. The residential ratepayer in Cobar is not carrying the load alone. The outback does the rest quietly. Solar is obvious. The sky is clear, the sun is consistent, and the economics of off-grid power generation in this climate are straightforward. Water management is part of life here, not an emergency. The community has the particular resilience of places that have been asked to sustain themselves at a distance from everything and have developed practical competence as a result. Cobar has a hospital, schools, supermarkets, and a social life built around the particular bonds that form when a community is distant enough from everywhere else that it has to generate its own reasons to exist. It has generated quite a few. The government will give you $10,000 to move to Cobar. The mines will pay you well when you arrive. And the cost of living, once you own your house in a town where houses cost less than cars do in Sydney suburbs, will look like a different financial system entirely. Because in important respects, it is. $10,000 is the immediate incentive. Cobar pays you to arrive. The next town cannot afford to do that, but it has kept itself alive through grants and stubbornness for long enough that the bet looks increasingly safe. Number 2. Morawa, Western Australia. This wheatbelt town keeps itself alive through grants, low overhead, and the determination of 450 people who have decided not to leave. Morawa sits in the Midwest region of Western Australia, approximately 370 kilometers north of Perth in the northern wheatbelt, where the farmland begins its long transition toward the Murchison. The Shire of Morawa covers 4,777 square kilometers, with a rate base anchored by farming properties, a small commercial center, and the particular fiscal discipline of a council that cannot afford to waste anything. This is not a town dying quietly. This is a town that has decided dying is not the plan. The Sino-Steel Midwest Community Fund, a grant program established as part of the mining company's community investment in the region, has directed substantial funding into Morawa and surrounding communities for local infrastructure, community projects, and services that would not otherwise survive a council budget of this size. Grants of up to $10,000 for qualifying community projects and organizations have been available through this mechanism, and Morawa has used them. The town's sporting facilities, community spaces, and local services reflect an investment that the rate base alone could not support. The landscape around Morawa does something extraordinary between July and September. The northern wheatbelt wildflower season here is among the most intense in Western Australia, with everlastings, wreath flowers, and morrison in quantities that make the roadsides look temporary, as if they have been dressed for an occasion. It is not an occasion. It is what happens when the rain comes, and the seeds do what they have been doing since before anyone arrived to notice. The pink lake near Morawa turns shades of rose and coral depending on the season, the algae, and the light. The landscape is not performing, it simply is. Property in Marawa reflects the arithmetic of a town of 450 people in a shire with no housing crisis, no investor speculation, and no proximity to anything that drives coastal prices. Houses are available from well under $100,000, making homeownership affordable. Blocks of land are available for amounts that would not cover a month's rent in Perth. The council rates are among the lowest in the state, simply a function of what the council is managing and how it must price its services to remain viable. There is a primary school. There is a medical center with visiting services. There is a supermarket, a roadhouse, sporting facilities, and a community that has the texture of a place that has been through difficult times and made a collective decision about which side of those times it intends to be on. Marawa is not selling freedom from regulation. It is selling stability, a town with low costs, community infrastructure funded in part by mining royalties, a landscape that rewards attention, and a council small enough that a resident with a concern can speak to the person responsible before the morning is finished. Marawa survives on determination and a mining fund. The next town has something neither of those towns does, a state government that is actively building houses and handing them to the workers it needs. Number 1, Port Pirie, South Australia. This is the industrial city where the state is funding new homes and offering first home buyers a level of support that the coastal market has made mathematically impossible. Port Pirie sits on the eastern shore of Spencer Gulf in South Australia, approximately 220 kilometers north of Adelaide, at the point where the Gulf narrows and the Flinders Ranges begin their rise in the east. The population is around 13,000 people. Port Pirie is not a ghost town, not a remote outpost, and not a settlement at the edge of what a government can practically administer. It is a functioning regional city with schools, hospitals, supermarkets, a substantial industrial base, and a housing market that operates in a different universe from the one visible on Domain. The city's economy is anchored by the Nyrstar smelter, one of the largest lead smelters in the world, and by the broader industrial and commercial activity that a regional center of this size sustains. The waterfront has been substantially redeveloped. The city has invested in infrastructure, tourism, and the kind of civic amenity that makes a place livable rather than merely functional. The South Australian government has committed more than $1 million in direct funding for the construction of new homes and the development of serviced allotments in Port Pirie, specifically to address housing shortages for the essential workers the city needs and cannot currently house. Teachers, police, healthcare workers, people doing the work that a regional city of 13,000 requires, who cannot afford or cannot find accommodation in the market as it currently exists. The first homeowner. Grant in South Australia applies to Port Pirie. The government is funding new homes and serviced allotments specifically for workers the city cannot currently house. The combination of a new home built with state funding support and a grant for first home buyers creates an entry point that looks nothing like what coastal buyers experience. Established houses in Port Pirie start from around $200,000. In context, the median house price in Adelaide is currently above $750,000. Port Pirie is not Adelaide, but it has the infrastructure of a real regional city, including a hospital, specialist clinics, secondary schools, supermarkets, retail, and sporting facilities. It is connected to Adelaide by the train line and the highway. Port Pirie is 220 kilometers from Adelaide. For an essential worker, a teacher, a nurse, or a police officer, Port Pirie is not a sacrifice. It is an arrangement in which the state pays part of your housing cost. The gap between regional and coastal prices returns a significant portion of your income to you, and the city provides the infrastructure that supports a life rather than merely an existence. The state of South Australia is building houses here. That is not a metaphor. That is a budget line item. The people moving into those houses are doing an arithmetic that the coastal property market has made impossible everywhere else. 5 towns. 5 ways out of a financial system that was never designed with you in mind. There are more. Subscribe, and we will find them.